Slow living isn't just a fantasy. It's a skill you can learn, and today I'm sharing everything I've discovered. 4 years ago, I was a first-time mom, unable to keep up in my home and barely able to shower and feed myself, let alone feel like I was thriving in motherhood. I stumbled across a video about minimalism and started down a long road to discovering a different way to live that's shaped by our family's values. At this point, I've consumed thousands of hours of advice on the subject, and I've channeled all of that into a masterclass on slow living with kids. In today's video, I'll take you through what the heck is slow living anyway, my roadmap to transform parenting, and deep dives on the practicalities of simplifying and slowing down. Living this way has given our family so much peace, but sadly a lot of people get caught up in chasing the surface level aesthetics and miss the deeper meaning. So let's start by giving you a foundation in the history of slow living and some first steps you can take. Slow living, simple living, off-grid living, what are all these things? And perhaps more importantly, what's happening out there? Why are so many of us seeking countercultural lifestyles? I have my suspicions. But first, let's answer the question of the video. What is slow living? Well, there's the modern slow living movement that kicked off in the 80s. Our Italian friends revolted against a McDonald's franchise coming to Rome, and the slow living movement was born. And it was the catalyst for people starting to evaluate the pace of many aspects of life. So one of the most popular books on the subject is In Praise of Slowness by Carl Honore, who was a hurried, fairly typical modern man, until he realized that he was rushing through the best opportunities to connect with his 2-year-old boy. That realization set him on a path to understand how he and the broader culture had gotten so out of control. And in doing so, he discovered a countercultural revolution of people choosing to slow down. Slow living started with food, appreciating regional produce, traditional foods, cooking from scratch. Not surprising, this would be the most spreadable idea. Cross-culturally, we like to eat well, and we feel healthier when we do. But Honore explored the evolution of the movement into all aspects of life, including homes, education, hobbies, work. Some might point to the associated acronym SLOW to explain the movement, which stands for sustainable, local, organic, and whole. Others might say slow living is about being present to and savoring the moment. I love that idea, to savor. And as we've seen the idea spread, more and more people are adopting it into their lives and living it out in their unique way, which might be why I tend to describe it as living intentionally at a pace that enables you to enjoy and allowing yourself to be different. I think that's pretty key. Slow living makes you inherently different. So coming back to my earlier question, why are so many of us seeking the countercultural life? My suspicion is that a long time ago, our culture diverged from the things our souls crave most deeply. And we're moving at a pace that is literally leaving our souls behind. We never slow down long enough for it to catch up with our bodies. I read about that once in a book, and I can't remember which one, sorry. The idea of slow living didn't start in the 80s. That's the origin of the modern movement, but slow living has been advocated for thousands of years. You can trace it back to many teachers, including Henry David Thoreau and Jesus of Nazareth. As a Christian, I tend to perk up when I hear Jesus' name. His teachings and his example in life pointed to inherent truths about the human condition. So why did he live slowly? What truth was he pointing to? I think it has to do with relationships. When I became a mother, I became acutely aware of the cultural lie that having a child wouldn't change my life. I used to think I'd be that parent who went out for cocktails with friends, like baby in tow.
I'm in a box.
You are in a box.
That's funny.
I assumed I could keep going at the same pace, accomplishing all my goals, but instead everything changed, and my whole focus narrowed in on this one human being, this precious soul. I think relationships take time. They take slowness and attention. I saw that. That was so cool. Especially with children, but truly with everyone. Jesus cared about this because he wanted us to be in relationship with God, and we had to slow down to do it. So why are we all drawn to the countercultural life of slowness? Because we feel chaotic. We feel disconnected. We want to touch dirt and knead bread and knit misshapen sweaters. We want to slow down long enough to snuggle with our kids or spouses. We want our souls to catch up with our bodies. Okay, then how do we start? If you've made it this far, I'm assuming you want to know how to begin. Well, my first recommendation is to accept trade-offs. Part of the reason we cling to speed is because we believe it's possible to do everything. And with that attitude, slow living will just become another thing you have to check off a list. But in many aspects of life, there are no solutions. It's not about greater efficiency. It's about knowing your priorities and accepting the inevitable trade-offs of pursuing those wholeheartedly. Which leads to my second recommendation, which is to pick and rank your priorities. I not only know what my priorities are, I have them ranked. For instance, creative work, which includes YouTube, is fourth on the list. It's below all my important relationships. And this means that I only produce one video a week, and some weeks I'll take off if the choice is to either produce a video or give the important attention to my relationships. Knowing my priorities and their order of importance makes it easier to accept the trade-offs. My third recommendation is to evaluate how you're currently spending time and determine if there is anything that doesn't align with the priorities. If you don't have a good handle on how you spend time, consider tracking your daily activities and the time spent. If you're already very scheduled, it might mean you consider whether you've taken on too much. And once you have a clear idea of how you're spending time, determine whether those commitments support your priorities. And keep in mind, if you're trying to slow down, the result of this exercise might be to do less or to rest more, to make time for play and leisure. And my fourth recommendation is to keep learning about slow living. There are great YouTube channels and podcasts on the subject, but also books: In Praise of Slowness, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, Let Them Be Kids, Essentialism. I'll link a few recommendations below, but those are some of my favorites. Yeah. Our culture doesn't support what really matters and causes us to bury our instincts. And if you're feeling that, you're not crazy. Your soul is speaking to you. Don't be afraid to listen. Until next time. Part of how I defined slow living in that video was by allowing yourself to be different. It takes a lot of courage and conviction to guide your family to live in a countercultural way, and there will be pushback if you make that choice. But I think there's more to slow living than what I covered in that video. So this next video tackles the risks of hustle culture and takes you through the essential steps to simplifying and slowing down. Our kids are facing an undeclared war on childhood. And for centuries, it's been driven by cultural forces more concerned with immediate economic growth than our children. Parents bearing the weight of hustle culture, laden with expectations and deadlines, feel trapped in a relentless cycle of busyness and pseudo-productivity. In today's video, I'll demonstrate why it's crucial to challenge the status quo for the sake of our kids. Through evidence from traditional wisdom and experts, I'll outline practical strategies to alleviate the strain. I feel strongly about this issue, which is why I've rewritten, reshot, and re-edited this video multiple times. I want to get it right. But first, let's debunk the idea that slow living is just another lifestyle choice among many. Slow living originated with slow food, promoting cooking from scratch and sourcing locally. It then evolved into movements like slow cities, slow school, slow medicine, all centered around seeking alternative solutions to modern problems by looking to traditional wisdom and practices. This movement honors our ancestors' wisdom, challenging the idea that modern advancements surpass ancient knowledge. And I think our experiments with pushing ourselves and our kids to the brink of exhaustion, our attempts to control them, and our tendency to compensate with gifts and praise have given us sufficient evidence that hubris drove us into our modern parenting frenzy. With the ever-quickening pace of our days, the ever-expanding girth of our stuff, and the boundless mountain of responsibilities, it's no wonder so many are at their wits' end. Now, let me challenge the idea that slow living can be reduced to an aesthetic. I don't want to suggest that the common representations of slow living, often tranquil countryside settings and contemplative females gently cradling steaming cups of tea, are completely shallow or not reflective of what it means to live slowly. They highlight a key aspect of slow living, drawing from time-tested traditions and integrating them into our lives. However, these scenes may wrongly suggest that slow and simple living is unattainable for many, or that it requires a daunting checklist. Bake the bread, raise the chickens, and wake with every sunrise to serenely sweep the porch. I never sweep my porch. And while I'm charmed by all those things, I want to distinguish this lifestyle from specific tasks or signals of slow that may exclude some families. Families who desperately need simple changes to build authentic connections, cultivate contentment, and balance priorities. Slow motherhood is about embracing deliberate parenting approaches rooted in traditional wisdom. You can adopt the values without baking the bread. I am a thoroughly modern woman who spends more time supervising kids on the playground than prancing joyfully through open prairies. However, the misalignment of my life with visual signals of slow living has not prevented us from slowing or simplifying. In his bestseller, Simplicity Parenting, Kim John Payne recounts his experiences counseling child refugees in Jakarta, where he treated post-traumatic stress disorder. Later, while working with affluent children in England, he noticed similar symptoms, attributing them to the impact of hustle culture. Despite initial skepticism, Payne recognized that these children faced chronic stress and insecurity akin to those in war-torn areas. He coined the term the undeclared war on childhood to describe this phenomenon. Excessive busyness and environmental overwhelm can result in various challenges for children, including increased stress, reduced attention span, impaired creativity, impulsivity, and lack of emotional security. These issues can lead to difficulties in emotional regulation and adapting to change. For parents, this can translate to overwhelm, strained family relationships, reduced quality time, emotional burden, and guilt. Additionally, limited time for self-care can result in burnout and decreased resilience. Before diving into the approaches I've used to simplify life with my kids, let's address a fundamental truth. You don't need a big life to have a valuable one. Embracing slow and simple living hinges on accepting this truth. Otherwise, you'll constantly seek validation through busyness, which won't fulfill you. And it's crucial to understand that meaningful contributions can still be pursued while living slowly, whether through raising children, work, creativity, or community involvement. This requires abandoning frantic pursuits and instead slowly cultivating your contributions over time. Now, on to the approaches. I've been rereading Sharon Creech's Chasing Redbird, a book I loved as a kid. It follows Zinni, a 13-year-old who finds solace in clearing an overgrown trail on her family's farm amidst personal challenges. There was an emotional overgrowth in her life, but in clearing the thick weeds covering that trail, she also unraveled the tangle of loss, confusion, and her burgeoning desire for autonomy. As a child, I missed the metaphor, but now I see my own simplifying journey mirrored in it. Many of us minimalist enthusiasts advocate for decluttering to untangle our lives. We know its transformative power. If our stories aren't enough, experts back up the benefits of decluttering. Dr. Maria Montessori emphasizes the importance of order for children's development. Montessori experts Simone Davies and Junifa Uzurdike stress the importance of order even for babies. Organizational behavior expert Elizabeth Sander has reported on research which unveils the harmful impact of clutter on cognition and well-being. The findings suggest that disorganization and clutter burden our brains, depleting cognitive resources and hindering focus. Put simply, if you're trying to get things done and you just can't seem to, it could be the clutter. In her eye-opening book, Hunt, Gather, Parent, Michaeline Duclef explores traditional parenting practices in ancient cultures. She reveals how these practices cultivate kindness, confidence, and drive in children. Duclef also highlights how modern Western parenting has strayed from these beneficial approaches, citing factors like the decline of multi-generational homes and the emphasis on material possessions, a phenomenon she refers to as thingamajig apocalypse. And let's not forget Jesus Christ's wisdom on this subject. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. A simplified environment is crucial for both kids and adults to thrive. Consider a simple scenario. If a child has 5 pairs of shoes to choose from when leaving the house, it can lead to complications. What if she can't find the matching pair or struggles to decide which to wear? This abundance of choices can overwhelm her and lead to conflicts when parents rush the process. Providing a clutter-free environment promotes autonomy and fosters peace in our families. So number 1 is simplify your environment. Last Christmas, I gave my daughter a picture book treasury of the Laura Ingalls Wilder series. In it, there was a daily routine Ma, Caroline Ingalls, followed. Wash on Monday, iron on Tuesday, mend on Wednesday, churn on Thursday, clean on Friday, bake on Saturday, rest on Sunday. As a mother managing a homestead, she had additional daily responsibilities. However, assigning specific tasks that didn't require daily attention to certain days brought predictability and simplicity, creating essential order in the family's life. In his chapter on rhythm, Kim John Payne wrote, "Whenever I ask a mother or father to describe for me a typical day in their home, 9 times out of 10, they begin by saying, 'There is no typical.'" In his recent book, Slow Productivity, Cal Newport suggests we rethink our approach to work, prioritizing deep work over pseudo-productivity tasks like emails and endless meetings. Newport advises limiting daily goals, drawing from his experience as a doctoral student at MIT. Initially resisting his advisor's advice to focus on 1 major task a day, Newport eventually realized the benefits of a more steady approach. I was, of course, wrong, and she was right. There's a calibrated steadiness to working on just 1 major initiative a day. Real progress accrues while anxiety is subdued. Now you might be curious about how this translates into the life of a modern mom, so here's a peek into my routine. Mondays, video production. Tuesdays, either errands or bills. Wednesdays, more video production. Thursdays, baking. Fridays, washing sheets. Saturdays, cleaning. Sundays, rest and worship. Alongside these weekly tasks, I have my daily routines. 1 load of laundry, cooking meals following a set plan, tending the gardens, tidying the house and closing the kitchen at night. Also prioritizing personal hygiene and getting dressed each morning, which if you have little kids, you understand why that's so important. I've adopted a principle from Kendra Adachi's book, The Lazy Genius Way. Decide once, I don't want to waste energy wondering what to do each day or falling behind on chores. By setting up predictable systems and limiting daily goals, I keep up with things while preserving my mental bandwidth. Another important aspect of creating predictable systems is organizing the home. I put this after simplifying because a cluttered home doesn't organize well. Let's circle back to the shoe example. Near our back door, we have a drop zone with 3 baskets. One for Peyton's outerwear, one for Theo's, and a shared basket for shoes. This straightforward setup has helped our kids know where things belong and given them independence in managing their stuff. So number 2 is create predictable systems. I've realized that my kids have a much better sense of how to live than I do. They grasp life's ebb and flow, seamlessly transitioning between work, play, and rest. They pitch in with gardening alongside mom and dad, then pivot on a dime to dashing through the sprinklers or lounging in the grass. Watching them has taught me the importance of pinpointing the key elements of our daily routines while also recognizing where we can be flexible. For instance, we always kick off the day with a hearty breakfast, but whether we follow it with a creative art project or time in the garden varies. Parenting advice typically pushes for consistent routines, but these suggestions often overlook the complexities of family life. And they tend to originate from individuals with education backgrounds who may be applying school-like structures to home life. This approach overlooks the fact that parents are managing more than just their children's education. And I think it fails to consider the broader goals families are striving for in the cultivation of values within their kids. In fact, I fear this method assumes kids can't shape their own days or reflects adults' desire to control their activities, potentially hindering autonomy and development of attributes such as intrinsic drive, helpfulness, and the ability to occupy oneself independently. While I believe in preserving the key aspects of our days, our children need these islands of stability. I've found that strictly following a set sequence isn't always feasible. Instead, I prioritize certain elements and otherwise maintain flexibility. These include nutrition, ensuring proper sleep and rest, completing household duties with optional child involvement, and fostering connection throughout the day. Were you to follow us through a week in our life, you'd notice a couple things. We prefer activities that the whole family can enjoy, like short hikes, disc golfing, and trips to parks with shady benches for mom to relax and read. We invite, but never force, the kids into household tasks. Some of their favorites include unloading the dishwasher, putting away laundry, watering the garden, planting seeds, and watching daddy fix things. I bring my kids on errands. Do things go wrong sometimes? Yeah. Last week I paid for $40 worth of shattered ceramic magnets that Theo knocked off a display. But these experiences are opportunities for them to learn appropriate behavior in adult settings. We keep our schedule light. Embracing flexibility with kids might mean cutting back on commitments and simplifying your schedule, as I found out myself. So number 3 is create a flexible routine. Navigating parenting today can feel like being a sheet blown by the wind, constantly changing direction with every trend touted by so-called parenting experts. I don't think parenting was meant to be learned and relearned by every generation, but many of us feel ill-equipped with a set of tools we inherited, so we keep trying new approaches, overhauling and tearing out tested and failed theories as we go. The question that comes to mind for me is, how do we allow our approach to parenting to evolve where it needs to, while also remaining rooted in who we are? In his book, Digital Minimalism, Cal Newport explores how the Amish community carefully evaluates new technology based on their values. He highlights their deliberate decision-making driven by a dedication to upholding community, simplicity, and a shared sense of identity. Growing up, I observed the purposefulness of the Amish lifestyle through my dad's work with them. Newport's book helped me understand the wisdom behind their choices. Despite criticisms of the Amish cultural structure, I believe aligning with our values, not cultural trends, fosters genuine peace. Here's an example from my life. A pitfall many parents fall into is relying on media to occupy our kids. I, for one, used to rely on TV for a 90-minute daily break. Recently, I made a big change and cut it down to 20 minutes. Peyton watches briefly while I put Theo down for his nap. To do this successfully, I stopped focusing on my fears about screens and instead considered how to promote a lifestyle aligned with our family values: connection to nature, family, community, and God. I found that when aligning ourselves in this way, even if screens sneak into our days, they remain in the margins. So instead of being a screen-free family, we treat screens as tools to promote our values. When the screen does come on, it's for our family to enjoy something together. So number 4 is orient to your values. When NPR journalist Michaeline DeCleffe was tasked with reporting on how Maya parents in Mexico's Yucatan region foster attention in their children, she quickly discovered a broader narrative unfolding. The children not only showed greater capacity for attention than most Western kids, but also displayed more helpfulness, community awareness, and emotional regulation. This spurred DeCleffe to delve into indigenous and hunter-gatherer communities worldwide, living among them to unravel the secrets of their parenting mastery and uncover how Western parenting veered off course. In her subsequent book, Hunt, Gather, Parent, DeCleffe not only offers practical tips, but also unveils an approach that has significantly simplified how I approach guiding my children. Expanding on my limiting media example, I've come to understand how crucial it is to consider my own behavior as the initial influence on my kids. If I'm demonstrating rest by watching TV or being glued to a smartphone, they'll mimic that behavior. DeCleffe's research on traditional parenting cultures led her to outline this formula: model, practice, acknowledge. So what did this look like? Model. I got a $90 flip phone. This allows me to put away my iPhone unless I'm using it for a specific purpose, such as to take pictures or videos for my job as a content creator. Practice. Peyton used to get 90 minutes of screen time during Theo's nap. I genuinely believed I couldn't get through the day without it, but now she only watches while I put Theo to sleep and then is promptly encouraged to turn it off. We follow that with some one-on-one time, games or chores together, independent activities side by side. Through this, we're practicing behaviors that are rejuvenating and restful, but not screen-based. Acknowledge. This part of the formula is to be used sparingly and only as needed. DeCleffe emphasizes that acknowledgement is not praise. I see it as looking for opportunities to affirm a trend of desired behaviors rather than giving input for every instance. This is one example of how I reframed my view of parenting and applied it to our media consumption, but this formula can be applied more broadly. It simplified things for me. If I want my kids to be generous, I lead by example and offer them chances to practice. For instance, I always offer them some of my food, but I've recently started accepting their offers of food in return, even when it's been handled by grubby little paws. When they offer, I might acknowledge the generosity with a subtle wink or a comment on their maturity. It's also possible they won't offer. Young children don't always make the choices we hope for, but we continue to model and provide opportunities to practice the desired behavior. So number 5 is model, practice, acknowledge. In my opinion, the subject of simplifying life with kids isn't particularly useful if it fails to address one of the hardest aspects of parenting: conflict, in the forms of tantrums and misbehavior. In her time with the Inuit community, DeCleffe witnessed how they expertly applied the model, practice, acknowledge approach to help children learn to regulate their emotions. The community recognizes that emotional skills, like academic skills, are built step by step. Unlike many Westerners, they understand the developmental stages of emotional growth and have strategies to nurture them. I recently watched an Instagram reel by Revived Woman, a great account for simple living with kids. In the reel, she listed her common parenting challenges, including blaming myself when my kids struggle or suffer in any way. It hit me like a lightning bolt. I do this. I kept thinking, I can or should hack our days to ensure they don't get overstimulated or tired and on. But I have to remember that my kids are little humans who are still learning appropriate behavior and how to calm themselves. Truth is, I wanted to hack our days because I lacked effective tools for handling my kids' tough moments. This is a huge topic, so I can't cover it all here, but I'll give you a taste. Today, I'll share the mindset shifts that helped me reduce conflict with my kids. First, many parents struggle with anger toward bad behavior. The Inuits teach that if you respond with anger, the behaviors only escalate. By staying calm, you model the desired behavior. But how do we shift that emotional response within ourselves? Here, Duclef learned that Inuit people expect children to misbehave. Having appropriately set expectations can do a world of good in curbing one's emotional reaction to undesired behaviors. Often when my kids are acting up, I repeat this as a motto to keep me calm. Expect them to misbehave. Expect them to misbehave. Duclef also learned Inuits never argue with a child. In fact, she never observed adults engaging in arguments with children. They consider it to be demeaning to everyone involved. Even when mistreated, you don't fight back with a young child. Just leave the point alone. Whatever is wrong, eventually the behavior will get better. This is hard for me. I struggle to trust things will get better, but I do see that engaging in arguing or negotiating or over-explaining creates ongoing and unhelpful tension between me and my daughter. You'll likely have to employ a tactic of selective hearing or what my sister calls dead face to move past misbehaviors or mistreatments from children. But Duclef's book is full of tools for responding to tantrums, misbehaviors, and sculpting desired behavior, which helps me to feel more confident that things will improve under my guidance. Another crucial mindset: encourage, don't force. Hunter-gatherer communities teach us that control and punishment hinder growth and strain the parent-child relationship. Instead, they use more nuanced and creative approaches to gain cooperation. For example, when Peyton and her dad were butting heads over who would retrieve her water bottle, I jumped in with a riddle. The water bottle is on a surface in the room where we keep the bananas. Where is the water bottle? Peyton immediately leapt up and ran out of her bedroom to solve the mystery. Covering the nuances and tactics for handling conflict will have to wait for another video. But I want to assure you that there are tools available to manage and shape behavior. And if you'd like to learn more about them now, then I've linked to the book Hunt, Gather, Parent in the description below. So number 6 is learn to manage conflict. It was 2009 when Kim John-Payne first published Simplicity Parenting. It was the 1980s when he observed the effects of cumulative stress on his English patients. I keep wondering, is the resistance to unscheduled time with kids actually about not being able to handle it ourselves? The majority of parents raising children now aren't just adults sucked into the false promises of hustle culture. We're the products of it. How do we let it go? In The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, John Mark Comer explores how Jesus' life serves as a model for living at a more natural pace. Comer recounts Jesus' response to his friend Lazarus' illness, highlighting his deliberate approach to life, even in the face of a life or death situation. Reflecting on Jesus' actions, Comer emphasizes, this rootedness in the moment and connectedness to God, other people, and himself weren't the byproducts of a laid-back personality. They were the outgrowths of a way of life. He suggests that modern individuals seeking a similar lifestyle intentionally slow down physically, noting, we are embodied creatures, whole people. Our minds are the portals to our whole persons, but the mind is not the only portal. I discovered the truth of this in a powerful way when I decided to slow down physically and verbally with my kids. It dawned on me that small children process everything more slowly, yet I was still prone to rushing in my movements and speech. Initially, it felt odd and uncomfortable, like moving in slow motion. However, it had a calming effect on my nervous system, making me more emotionally and mentally flexible. I stopped talking unless absolutely necessary. Instead, I use hand gestures and subtle facial expressions. I observe the kids closely, allowing me to anticipate issues or needs and respond in the least intrusive way. When Theo, my 2-year-old, marches up to the rock wall at the park, I don't shout, "Stop!" Instead, I walk up behind him silently and provide a spot in case he needs it. By slowing my body, I tapped into a soul-level need to move through life at a natural pace. If you're struggling with an addiction to busyness, try starting with one of these. Do tasks at half speed. Drink your coffee while it's hot. Make time for a craft. Do just one thing at a time. John Mark Comer calls it single tasking. Invite your kids to join you in household duties. It'll really slow you down. If you haven't noticed, this approach is to slow living what decluttering is to simple living. We're taking a practice that's about a shift at the level of the soul and making it tangible through bodily action. This is also a perfect example of what I said earlier in the video about the signals of slow that we often see in slow living content. I don't think they're shallow. I think they're examples of important practices that make the lifestyle tangible. I simply believe we shouldn't confine ourselves to examples we see online. And I think it helps to understand why we're doing it in the first place. So number 7, practice slow movement. Okay, we're down to our last approach. When I started scripting this video, I had a simple idea in mind. Share a bunch of slow living activities that families can do together, like picking wildflowers and catching a sunset. And I still think that would be a really fun video. But then I realized there's this mom out there who needs more than just activities. She needs a roadmap for transforming her family's life. So what you're getting today is a snapshot of my journey over the past 4 years. And in future videos, I'll be diving into each of these categories in much more detail. If that sounds like something up your alley, then consider subscribing. Now for the last approach. Throughout history, and even today in many cultures, the whole community contributes to raising children. From siblings watching out for each other, to neighbors offering guidance, to extended family pitching in, this collective effort is crucial. Without it, we're left to navigate parenthood in our small pods, making the journey much harder. Now allow me a caveat. I don't see hard as a bad thing because we grow through trials. But there's also no righteousness in it, meaning we need not be gluttons for punishment, which is why I advocate so strongly for simplifying and slowing. And I'm sure there are ways to build a solid support system for ourselves and our families within the context of our own culture. I've already started to explore this as a next step in my slow parenting journey. But remember, we're meant to parent in community. So even if all you do to start building that community is hit subscribe today, it's one small step toward creating that necessary support system. I created that video a few weeks after reading the book Slow Productivity. And prior to reading that book, I was producing 1 video a week, and since I only work about 10 hours a week, I really felt like I was just churning them out. And there wasn't a lot of time to slow down and really think through my work. But the book really advocated for the value that we can add when we allow ourselves to really sit with our work. So it ended up taking me 8 weeks to produce that video, but it allowed me to think through my ideas more thoroughly than I had ever done before. And I love videos in this niche that are inspirational, but many of us also need practical guidance, which is where the next module comes in. In my opinion, the first step in simplifying and slowing down is to declutter your home. You need to have an environment that's a sanctuary. You need to have a place that is easy to maintain, but also simplifies daily decision making. But often people launch themselves into decluttering with misaligned expectations for how long it's going to take and without a real strategic approach to how they're going to do it. So this next video will give you guidance on how to master your approach to decluttering. A big question many of us have is how long will it actually take for me to declutter my home? Some assume years, while others think it'll just be a few weeks, and both can be way off. The truth is, you'll likely be one of 4 decluttering types, and each type has its own timeline for results. Today, I'm here to help you figure out which type you are, what timeline to expect, and some quick tips to speed up your results. First off, it's important to know why having clear expectations about how long it takes to declutter your home is key to success. So to keep it simple, let me introduce you to Baker A, Erica, me, and Baker B, Schmerica, definitely not me. So Erica and Schmerica are both craving a batch of perfectly baked cookies. Now, Schmerica has a recipe and knows that making her cookies involves several steps: careful measuring, assembling ingredients in order, chilling the dough, and baking to perfection. And she understands the whole process will take about 2 hours. On the other hand, Erica thinks she can whip up cookies in just a few minutes. So she rushes to the kitchen, grabs ingredients haphazardly, skipping crucial steps along the way because she wants instant cookies. Starting off, Schmerica carefully assembles the ingredients in just the right order. Meanwhile, Erica tries to speed things up by wildly throwing everything together. When it comes time to bake, Schmerica's cookies turn out beautifully golden and delicious, while Erica's are...
They actually turned out looking pretty good. They taste terrible. So hopefully we haven't lost the point, because really, which woman ultimately achieved her original goal?
The lesson here: when you start a project with unrealistic expectations, it leads to disappointment, discouragement, and overwhelm. But when you know how long it'll really take, you can tackle it with the right mindset, and that keeps you from giving up when things get tough. Plus, if you think it'll be quick, you're more likely to cut corners, just like Erica. All right, now that you know why this matters, let's dive into the 4 decluttering types and find out which one you are. And as a quick aside, I'd recommend you stick around to the end, because even if you learn who you are early on, it might help to learn about the other decluttering types, as some of them might be living in your home. All right, first up is what I call the cheetah. Just like a cheetah, this decluttering type is all about intense speed. You might go for a while making slow progress, but then bam, you dive in with laser focus and crazy energy. You attack that mess like a cheetah chasing down its prey. Cheesiest thing I've ever said. Now, being a cheetah has some serious upsides. You can make lightning fast progress and you get instant visible results, which feels amazing. But while the cheetah approach sounds fast, the data indicates that this group tends to spend years decluttering somewhat sporadically. The reality is that cheetahs are often at risk for burnout. You thrive on those quick, intense bursts, usually when something big comes up, like company coming to stay or a major move. The problem? Well, after you power through, you have zero energy left for maintenance, which means clutter can pile up between those sprints. Plus, cheetahs often avoid tackling the hard stuff, the sentimental or tough to let go items. It might not seem like a big deal, but that's the clutter that can really challenge your spending habits. And if you're stuck in a cycle of decluttering, then buying more, you'll never break free. So let's talk about how you harness your cheetah power without crashing. After that burst of decluttering, set up a routine to keep the clutter from creeping back. It can be as easy as spending 5 minutes tidying each room at the end of the day, keeping decluttering bins in strategic spots around your house, or taking on a fun challenge like the 30-day minimalism game. When you get that burst of energy, don't try to declutter your whole house in one go. Instead, pick 1 or 2 spaces and go all in. One of the problems cheetahs run into is they tend to declutter at a surface level over and over again. Until you push yourself to make the deep cuts, you're unlikely to gain the benefits of a minimized home. To break the cycle of decluttering and reaccumulating stuff, commit to a spending freeze. Challenge yourself to stop buying non-essentials for a set period, and I'd recommend at least a week, but honestly, a month would be better. This forces you to really appreciate what you already have and prevents the clutter from creeping back in. Plus, it gives you time to focus on maintaining the progress you've made instead of constantly adding more to the pile. Next up, we've got the owl declutterer. Owls are all about routine and observation. They are wise, steady, and consistent. So if this is you, you're probably really great at sticking to a decluttering routine, just like an owl hunting for its prey every night. You are super aware of what's going on around you, and you make sure that the clutter doesn't sneak up and take over in your house. Being an owl comes with some real strengths. You keep things tidy long term, so clutter never really piles up. You've got sustainable systems that are easy to stick with, and small, regular efforts means you avoid those big, overwhelming marathons. Owls tend to be one of the faster decluttering types, with their initial efforts taking a few months and then ongoing maintenance being part of their daily and seasonal routines. But owls have a few challenges. Sticking to a routine can sometimes make you too comfortable, causing clutter blind spots where certain items get overlooked. Those regular tidy ups might not always tackle the big hidden messes, like the clutter piling up in the garage or forgotten corners of a closet. Plus, if something disrupts your routine, like a major life change, you might struggle to adapt and get back on track. So there's always room to improve. While your routine keeps things under control, a deep dive every once in a while will push you to ask tough questions like, can I get by without this? Does this item serve a clear purpose in my life right now? Or if I were downsizing to half the space, would I take this with me? Make sure no area gets left behind. Try rotating decluttering zones consistently to hit every part of the house. So you don't just want to maintain, you also want to make progress. Set clear goals, such as testing out a capsule wardrobe to push yourself beyond just keeping up with the decluttering basics. Next up, we have the dolphin. Now, dolphins glide smoothly through water, moving in waves, and that's exactly how this decluttering style works. If you're a dolphin, you tackle clutter in phases, coming back to the same areas over time. Just like dolphins returning to familiar spots when hunting. Each pass refines your process, helping you make smarter and deeper decisions with every round. Being a dolphin comes with some great benefits. You get better at decision making with each round, and you benefit from a fresh perspective and growing confidence in yourself. This method works wonders for sentimental items, letting you ease into letting go without the emotional overload of thinking, oh, I need to decide all at once. You break big tasks into smaller, manageable chunks, which helps you to avoid burnout. The average dolphin will find themselves completing the bulk of their decluttering over a 1 to 2 year process, which is great. But dolphins can hit a few bumps along the way. For starters, decluttering in waves can make you chase the thrill of big results. Like, who doesn't love the sight of a car trunk just packed with bags headed for donation? It feels amazing. But here's the thing. At some point, decluttering gives diminishing returns. Dolphins might miss the moment when they need to switch gears from decluttering to setting up habits and organizational systems to maintain the space. Plus, constantly revisiting stuff or knowing you'll come around to it again can lead to overthinking or putting off hard decluttering choices for too long. So here's how to make your dolphin style even better. With each round, aim to make bolder decisions. Push yourself to decide once. Start asking yourself, do I want to be considering this item again in a few months, or should I just decide once? Remember that your stuff doesn't need to come ahead of your values and priorities. So adopt the minimal mom's mindset that if it's not a clear yes, it's a no. Once you've cleared a space, shift focus to building habits that keep it clutter-free. For instance, you could begin washing all your dishes before bed. It'll quickly reveal to you how few dishes you actually need, making it easier to downsize more in the kitchen. Dolphins can fall into the trap of scanning for items to declutter, rather than asking themselves to evaluate each individual item. Instead, when going through a space, pick up each item in that space and determine if it is a keep, a maybe, or a toss. I know, the tortoise sounds slow and boring, but stick with me. The tortoise is all about persistence and steady progress. Just like Aesop's classic character, the tortoise moves steadily but surely toward the finish line. This decluttering style takes small, manageable steps. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Being a tortoise has its perks. You're not in a rush, so there's no pressure to have immediate results, which is perfect if you're super busy or have limited energy. You enjoy consistent progress, as a little bit every day adds up to big results in the long run. This approach tends to have varied timelines by individual, with some tortoises completing their decluttering within 8 months, while others report a decade-long process. And so, there are some challenges to being a tortoise. The slow pace can get frustrating. Minimal effort might feel like it's not enough, and impatience can creep in. There's also the risk of getting too comfortable and avoiding the bigger, messier tasks. So here's how to boost your tortoise game. Celebrate the little wins. One drawer, one shelf at a time, by using a visual chart to track your progress and keep yourself motivated. Every now and then, set aside a bigger chunk of time to tackle high clutter areas. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Ask a friend to assist you, or schedule a donation pickup to give yourself a clear goal to work toward, or consider finding a decluttering course or a mentorship group that can help motivate you for the deeper dives. I don't currently offer one, but I'll link to some good options in the description. Start with spaces that will make the biggest difference in your day-to-day life. If you have limited time or energy, then a streamlined kitchen to ease up the process of cooking could work wonders to keep you inspired and moving forward,
and could result in you having more time to declutter because you're not spending as much time cooking and cleaning up from it. You might wonder, how did she figure out that there are different decluttering types? Well, I learned it from people sharing about their decluttering journeys online. By analyzing hundreds of responses to the question, how long did it take you to declutter? I identified 4 types, each with its own strengths and challenges. But here's the thing, it's not really about the type you are. What matters is reflecting on your approach. Too many people miss out on the life-changing effects of decluttering because they don't understand their own process or how to level up. Whether you've found your type or fall into a couple of categories, real progress isn't about speed, it's about sticking with it, letting the process transform you and prioritizing your life and your values over your possessions.
The primary purpose of that video was to get you to reflect on how you approach decluttering, but this next video is to get you thinking about why you're going to do it in the first place. Decluttering can be a pain in the butt, so you need to have something big and meaningful that drives you. Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erica. Today we're going to do a whole house declutter. I like to do these every few months, and I am ready to let go of things that aren't supporting what really matters to me. So let's get to the decluttering. Much of that video was inspired by the book Goodbye Things by Fumio Sasaki. Now, he's an extreme minimalist and has taken it much further than I ever will. But he really gets to the heart of the impact a simplified life can have on us. Now, there are lots of approaches and strategies to effectively declutter, but this next video will take you through 5 of my favorites. This is how to eliminate 500 items in just 30 days, which is ambitious. But to prove it can be done, I'm attempting to use these methods to complete the challenge in just 1 week. In today's video, I'll take you through 5 methods that will not only streamline your home, but also build the decluttering habits you need to stay clutter-free for life. Now, I'm a married mother of 2. I live in a 1,400 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, and I have 4 years of decluttering experience, which is a definite advantage. But I'm also a minimalist, which means 2 things. 1, I put off decluttering around my house for months in order to demonstrate this challenge to you. 2, even with that, there's not much stuff here. So getting to 500 will require me to go deep. So to kick us off, let me tell you about method number 1. I have 5 days. I am going to start off with trash bag therapy. And for those who get freaked out whenever you say trash, yes, I will separate out the recycling. Calm down. Okay, so there are some basic rules with this. First, I'm not laboring over decisions. This is stuff that's obvious trash. The second, in order to kind of stay at that high level, just obvious trash, I'm just gonna do 2 to 3 minutes per room, maybe a little longer in the basement, definitely a little longer in the garage. You will see why. I am gonna try to look in drawers and cabinets. I'm not just looking at what's on my surfaces. But I love this approach because it allows you to really make headway without having to make deep decisions, and it's just a great way to kick off a challenge like this. I remember a few years ago, I was pregnant with my son, and I had a pretty rough start to that pregnancy. So from about 5 weeks of pregnancy till 25 weeks, I was incredibly sick and just barely getting out of bed. And so obviously during that time, I didn't keep up with decluttering. And when I did finally get back on my feet, that's the first thing I did. Is I grabbed a trash bag and I started going through the house. And it was one of those black trash bags, a big one, probably a 30-gallon one. And I could not believe how quickly I filled that thing up. Our house is not that big. It was already decluttered, but the amount of trash that I was able to pull together and fill up a 30-gallon trash bag. I was like, why are we keeping all of this? It's kind of amazing how much stuff really needs to be cycled out of the house if we're not paying attention to it. Okay, I think I have my full trash haul from the house. I also have to go through all of the recycling from 2 months of recycling that has built up in our garage. We don't have recycling pickup at our house, so we have to take it to an actual recycling drop off. We've all been sick a lot this fall, so stuff like that kind of goes by the wayside. So I need to catch up on that and yeah, get this stuff out of here. But it's a good day 1. I'm gonna have to count and figure out exactly how much stuff I actually gathered. I don't normally count the trash that I'm getting rid of, but I will count. Look at all these hair ties I found. Yeah, I will count the trash and figure out what my number is. I'll put it up on the screen somewhere around here. All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow for the 12 by 12 by 12 declutter challenge. Okay, it is Tuesday. I have Peyton here with me. She is playing with puzzles at my feet. So the 12 by 12 by 12 basically just gives you a little bit of structure when you're decluttering. You're gonna look for 12 things that are trash, 12 things that need to be relocated, and 12 things to donate. It's kind of nice because you get to count the 12 things that are being relocated as part of the 500 that you're trying to collect. I was thinking that I would start in the closet, but I think I need an easy win. Can you all hear Peyton popping bubble wrap in the background? Maybe.
Pop, pop.
Pop, pop. There's nothing more satisfying than a bubble wrap pop. So as you all know, I've been a minimalist for a long time, and putting off decluttering for as long as I have, I decluttered a few areas. You guys know, I decluttered the toys. Putting it off for as long as I have noticed that it's just harder to do all of the normal stuff. It's harder to get a load of laundry done and actually get it put away. It's harder to get the dishes cleaned up. It's harder to order groceries and cook every day. And it's not even the volume in those different categories has necessarily gone up. I think what it is that there's just so much more random stuff and homeless stuff in particular sitting around the house. And so every time I see it, it's rent-free in my mind. This is disgusting. This is an old pillowcase. That's really gross. I did a load of recycling yesterday after trash therapy day, and then I did another load today. It's a shocking amount of recycling that we collected over the last few months. Oh, cute. These I was gonna save for Whitney's baby. Oh, this is really random, and it is trash. So these come off of our, what do you call them? Our chairs.
and they're just the covers, and they're not necessary, and they're constantly getting pulled onto the floor. So I'm gonna get rid of them. But I mean, I think they're just trash. I can't donate them. I think we've definitely found 12 trash items. The next thing I'm gonna work on is stuff to relocate. After we did the big toy declutter, there were a few things that I had hidden during the experiment and then decided to keep, such as our puzzles, and they just went back into this closet kind of by default, but I don't like that. I don't like the kids having to come in here to get access to different toys. So we're gonna start experimenting with some other places for them. We've got space in our cabinetry in our living room, so I'm gonna try it there. And if that doesn't work, then we might try their bedroom. Just play around with it a little bit.
I need to use that.
You want the breast pump?
So I can get milk.
You,
Can you keep it for my baby?
yeah, you can keep it for your baby.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, that was so sticky. So I've done more than 12 for trash. I've done about 15 at least for relocating stuff. And now I need to find my donations and then we'll be done in here for the day. I think I'm gonna have to take stuff out and it's gonna be really annoying. So I don't want to. I'm trying to just find something. Just looking. This is not a donation, but I think I wanted to show it to you guys. We ordered some books for homeschooling and they came in this really cool little case. One certainly could keep the case, but I don't find it very practical since I need to pull the books out regularly. So I'm gonna let it go even though it's really cute and pretty, but this I swear is the type of thing that can hang us up and that we can end up just having sit around and hang around our house. So I wanted to show it as an example. All right, so I have 3 books. So that puts us at 5. We need to find 12. I found it. It's my stash. So these are some books that I was thinking that we might get rid of. 9, 10, 11, made it to 12. I kind of like the structure and the fact that it sort of pushed me. Tomorrow, we're gonna do the no mess decluttering method. All right, we'll see you then. Bye. Okay, I counted up everything that I have found so far and we are at 217. Today we are doing the no mess decluttering method and this comes from Dana K. White. I think this is one of the best methods out there. We use this method to avoid making a bigger mess. We are dealing with each item fully and then moving on to the next one. So potentially the process takes longer, right? But in the meantime, you're not turning your house into a disaster zone. The tools that you need: a black trash bag. Dana recommends a black trash bag because it ensures that no one else can see what you've decided to throw away, and a box. The reason you have those with you is so that if you do have to stop mid declutter, you can just pick them up, put them into their respective places, and you can just move on with your day. And then the third thing that you need is your feet. And the reason that you need your feet is because every time you find an item that needs to be relocated, you're going to take it there right away. That's a big part of this method in making sure that you deal with every item and that you don't make a bigger mess. Because often, what are the piles that really become a problem? It's the keep piles. I thought we'd start by just clearing off this piece of furniture that has been accumulating things. And yeah, I'm kind of excited about this method because this space is so overwhelming to me. I feel like just dealing with one item at a time is kind of where my head's at. Like I just need to do one at a time and not worry about what's coming next. It's just what needs to happen with this pencil sharpener. And the first thing I can say is it needs to be emptied and then it needs to go back into my homeschooling bin. This is my husband's and this goes in the living room where he keeps his laptop. So I actually ran into something that tends to happen in this decluttering process. One of the things she says is when you take something to the location where it actually belongs and you find, oh, it doesn't fit in here, what do I do? You don't just set it off to the side or like put it on top. You have to then look around in that drawer, in that space, and be like, okay, is there anything in here that is trash or can be donated or needs to be relocated so that we can make space for the thing that actually belongs here. These are all Christmas decor things, so they actually need to go in the holiday bin downstairs. It's recommended that like when you do take it there now, you kind of look around the space and see, is there anything else that needs to make that trip with you. I used these to style a picture for a YouTube video recently, but they do need to go back into the holiday bin, so can add those there. I'm gonna go ahead and make this trip and then we'll be back. But we are making progress and actually I'm starting to feel better about it. What I love about this method, and part of the reason I wanted to show it to you all, is because of the fact that you can declutter without turning your house into a complete disaster and you can make progress. I'm realizing what I didn't do today is keep track of the number of things. Shoot. I'll count what I have like in trash and recycling and donations. That's a place to start at least, but oh man. Oh, that's okay.
All right, well, tomorrow I will be taking you through the fourth method that will help you to get to that 500 items in a month.
All right, it's Thursday. We are on day 4 of my decluttering extravaganza. So the method that I want to talk about today is atomic decluttering. It's based on James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. And in the book, he explains how habit formation works. So there are 4 stages to the process: cue, craving, response, and reward. And the cue is something that triggers your brain to initiate a behavior, such as like you see a cluttered countertop and seeing that clutter there tells you, I have to tidy this up. Then the craving is the motivational force behind every habit. So your craving might be to then sort through those items because you have the secondary motivational force to have a peaceful home. And you know that that step of sorting through the items is how you get there. Then the response is the actual habit that you perform, and it can take the form of a thought or an action. So in the past, when you saw a cluttered spot, you might have had the tendency to say, oh, I'll get to that this weekend, or I need to really set aside some time to deal with that. But now instead, you've already made some progress, so you are instead going to be focusing on your maintenance habits when it comes to decluttering. And so you're going to dedicate 3 minutes just to tidying up that space real quick, and then you can move on. Now the reward is the 4th stage, and this is the end goal of every habit. Clear says the cue is about noticing the reward, the craving is about wanting the reward, and the response is about obtaining the reward. We chase rewards because we have 2 purposes. They satisfy us and they teach us. So what I've been doing this week is maintaining my evening tidies, and also just anytime I get a chance to do a little tidy throughout the house, I take it. The other 3 methods that we talked about earlier in the video are really all about getting you through that initial purge, getting your house to a place where it is much more manageable. You'll have to create more than just decluttering habits in order to run your home well. Maybe it's a daily laundry, maybe it's doing the dishes at the end of every night, but I think a daily declutter of flat surfaces is a really great place to start. Okay, at this point I have found 304 items that are going to be decluttered from our house, permanently leaving. My goal is to get to 500, so I'm not sure if I am going to accomplish that goal, but I am going to try my darndest tomorrow. So I will see you all then. Please, be rooting me on. Can we get to 500 items by the end of this challenge? Okay, it's Friday. So this has been a big week. I need to find 196 items today. I still don't entirely feel confident that it's possible, but I want to sound confident. So we're going to do it. Was that even remotely convincing? So the final method that I'm walking you all through is what I call mini purges. And this is where you dedicate 5 minutes, and in that 5 minutes, you focus on one small category. Let's get started. So something I was thinking about this week is that when I actually did my initial whole decluttering experience, those first couple of months of like really purging my house, I was using the Pomodoro method when it came to work, but I would set a timer, and for anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes, I would just entirely focus on my work. And then when that timer went off, I would get up, set a 5-minute timer, and allow myself to go and declutter during that time, which obviously was easy to do because I was working from home. But I would just have those 5 minutes. And so I would go down to the storage area or run over to the kitchen or up to my closet, whatever space I happened to be working on, and just item by item go through and consider everything that I had. And it did a couple of things. One, because I only had 5 minutes, it didn't allow me enough time to really get hung up on making a decision. If something was a difficult decision, I would just set it aside and move on to the next thing so that I could continue to make progress. But the other thing that happened is that when that 5 minutes was up, I would go back upstairs, set a 25-minute timer, get back to work. While I was working, and just focused on something completely different, in the background in my mind, I would be processing those items that are a little more difficult. And often what would happen is that I would come to a conclusion like, yes, I definitely do need to keep that thing. I use it for X, Y, or Z reason, or no, I don't need to keep it. And so taking that time away would allow me to make those decisions kind of just without realizing I was making them. And then when my 25 minutes would be up and I would get my next opportunity to go and declutter, I would run down there and those difficult items, like a decision would have already been made. Okay, we are done. Here around me, I have 72 items, which is about 120, a little bit more shy of my goal. So I did not make it to 500 items, which is such a shame. I think I'm going to have my husband go through some of his things and see if we can round up a few more items to declutter. And if we find any more, I will put our final number right here. What I know about getting a home decluttered and keeping a home decluttered is that it's a balance of behaviors and mindsets. Most of us need to establish those new behaviors in order to get our home decluttered in the first place and in order to keep it decluttered. But we also need to take on those new mindsets to carry us through this entire process.
I think one of the most important habits to get in place when you first start decluttering is the daily tidy. It helps keep you motivated, and it also helps for other members of the family to start to see the value and impact of decluttering, which can help get them on board. It's also one of the first steps for creating systems and routines in your home and with your family, which matters because decluttering will help. It'll make a huge difference, but eventually it has diminishing returns. And so you have to take that next step of organizing and setting up habits. So in the next module, I'll show you some realistic daily habits, easy to replicate organization, and the lazy girl's approach to meal planning. One of the hardest things for me to accept is that I get one priority at a time. As a recovering multitasker, workaholic, and perfectionist, I'm still tempted to try to do it all. But there's one thing I'm now certain of. More than the blanket of security that doing everything perfectly gives me, I want deep, abiding connections with God, my husband, and my kids. And I define this priority as peace in my home and family. And everything needs to flow from that. So knowing my priority helps me to develop the routines that govern our daily lives. I don't try to do everything. There are a lot of things that I want to do that I simply say no to in this phase of life. Today I'm going to talk about establishing predictable routines to simplify life and order it around what really matters. So I started by acknowledging my priority, and I intentionally have only one. Gary Keller, author of The One Thing, tells us to be precise. The word is priority, not priorities. And it originated in the 14th century from the Latin prior, meaning first. If something mattered the most, it was a priority. Then, knowing my priority, I asked myself, what needs to happen every day in service to that? From there, I built my routines. The advantage of routines is they give us order and predictability. They conserve our mental energy by reducing the need to make the same decision over and over and over again. For instance, I run a load of laundry every evening. I don't question if I will or won't run it. There's no evaluating if we have enough underwear to make it to the weekend, or glancing at a growing pile every day wondering when I'll finally get around to it. By doing a load every day, I release my mind from that kind of mental clutter, and I always have clean clothes. For me, I found it necessary to establish daily, weekly, and monthly routines. So every day, I do the dishes, which means unloading the dishwasher in the morning, and then loading it and starting it at the end of the night. I wash and put away laundry, I spot clean the floors, I tidy the house, I cook meals, and seasonally I water the garden. There are other things I could do, such as making the bed or cleaning my toilets, but I found those things don't serve my underlying priority enough to warrant the time spent. I have weekly and monthly routines as well, which I'm still refining, so that's a future video. Once I knew the things that needed to happen routinely, I had to decide where to integrate them into my days. I've been hugely influenced by James Clear's Atomic Habits, which warrants its own video. Let me know in the comments if you'd be interested. The biggest takeaway for me was his use of cues and habit stacking. For instance, if I'm already in the habit of starting coffee first thing in the morning, then I can use the completion of that task as my cue to unload the dishwasher. This way I'm more likely to follow through on the new habit. I'm also setting myself up for a good dishes day because I'll have an empty dishwasher ready to be loaded throughout the day, making the task of loading and starting it at night much more simple. Personally, I find it easier to maintain daily routines than weekly and monthlies. But because I have my central priority, I can always go back to that when I'm tempted to throw out weekly food prep for a night of vegging out on the couch. Though rest is important too, and it's part of my weekly routine. Before I became a parent, I allowed myself to be ruled by a cultural message that I shouldn't have to do laundry or cook or clean or essentially care for the blessings in my life. So I would put them off and avoid them, allowing those responsibilities to then hang over my head. I didn't appreciate these tasks as the natural cultivating of my life's gifts. That being said, I don't think our responsibilities have to be overwhelming or all-consuming. Simplifying our homes, slowing our lives, and breaking responsibilities down into routines provide much-needed balance between work and rest. Decluttering your home and establishing daily habits is such a confidence boost, but one of the habits that tends to trip people up is meal planning. I believe the best place to start is with a simple, low-effort approach because we have to walk before we can run. And in the next video, I'll show you how I apply this mindset to meal planning. 5, maybe 6 years ago, when I began learning to cook and meal plan, I found the entire process daunting. And I made a lot of mistakes. Over-ordering, under-ordering, food waste, botched recipes, you name it, I did it.
Appalachian sunrise meets my...
But I also persevered. Thankfully, the need to eat never goes away, so mastering the skill remained a persistent thorn in my side. So I tried a lot of approaches. I bought meal subscription boxes, and I learned some basic techniques for cooking and flavoring meals. I tried cookbooks. Some were fails, but others began to give me the foundational skills for stocking a pantry and ingredient prepping. I observed my family's preferences and made tweaks to the meals I planned. Steve won't eat raw vegetables, but he'll eat them cooked. Slight pivot from me means more nutrition for him. It's hard to explain how to master meal planning because a lot of it comes down to the specifics of one's home, family, budget, even your own personality traits. For me, persistence and experimentation were big parts of the process. But I also took in a little advice, and the best advice I got was to simplify. Less food inventory overall, simple meals. So I asked myself, what's the simplest meal planning I could possibly do? The answer for me, 1, cook meals that I know by heart. When I started, it was a measly 5 dishes. 2, cook as few dinners as possible each week with breaks from cooking every 2 to 3 days. Currently, we follow this schedule. Mondays, leftovers. Tuesdays, black bean tacos or green salsa chicken on rice. Wednesdays, pulled pork and roasted veggies. Thursdays, breakfast for dinner, usually an egg scramble or pancakes. Fridays, leftovers. I'm always tired on Fridays. Saturdays, roast chicken, roasted veggies, and fresh bread. This is my heavy cooking day. Sundays, chili and leftover bread from Saturdays. 3, expect life to revolve around the kitchen. I know that every day I will have touch points in the kitchen. I've accepted that the kitchen is the heart of my home, and when it's running well, then everything else in our home and family follows suit. 4, break down kitchen tasks into small, bite-sized chunks. For instance, rather than cooking an entire dinner in one go, I will instead do as many steps of the dinner prep throughout the day. So on taco night, I might take a minute to chop the onion while the kids color in the morning. Later, I'll mix the spices for my seasoning. After lunch, I'll stage each of the ingredients on the counter so I can easily grab them when I'm putting it together. Maybe I do have to be in the kitchen regularly, but it doesn't have to be all-consuming. I look for tasks that I can do in 5 minutes or less. 5, repeat the same meals for as many weeks as my family and I can stomach them. When the meals are the same, the grocery list tends to be the same. Ingredient prepping becomes predictable, even budgeting is easier. Our food has to sustain us and provide nutrition. It doesn't have to wow us and our families every single night. I realize some people don't have the privilege of being home all day, so some of these approaches won't be accessible, or at least not in the same exact way.
but consider if anything can be adapted to your situation. Like I said, I developed this approach through years of trial and error, testing ideas from other women until I found what worked for me. And I'm still always testing it and looking for ways to improve. So this doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need a digital download or another cookbook, though there are great ones out there. You just need a piece of paper, a pen, and to list out the meals you know by heart. And I'll leave you with this. I would have thought that such simplified meals would have quickly resulted in culinary boredom, but instead, I can refine my approach to the meals, improve on their taste, introduce from scratch elements, and focus on what really matters, time spent preparing and enjoying food with the people I love.
When I first sat down to write out the recipes that I knew by heart, I was surprised by how short the list was. It was discouraging, and I was tempted to pad it with recipes that I didn't actually know by heart. But I realized I had to be honest about where I was on that day in order to make true progress. Accepting my starting point for what it was allowed me to grow, and it helped me to set up truly effective systems in my kitchen and throughout my whole home. In the next video, I'll share the easiest systems you can replicate to streamline your space too.
Quick story, when I was a kid, I was pretty orderly, and so my mom would always put me in charge of reorganizing the homeschool closet. And I would get in there and get everything back in order and really ship-shape. But I didn't understand the importance of systems and putting organization systems in place that are easy to replicate for multiple people day after day after day. And so pretty soon I'd be back in there tidying things up again. This might have been in part because we had a little bit too much, but the systems were pretty key too. So today I'm going to take you through all of the systems that we have in our house that are simple and truly tested. All right, so the first thing that I want to show you are our various storage systems for outerwear. So when we first come in from our garage, which is how we are typically coming and going from the house, we come into our kitchen and we have this little area that's an eating area as well as a makeshift drop zone. We took this unit that was previously being used to display toys for the kids and we repurposed it. We got these baskets in here, which thankfully we already had, and each child has their own basket. And in here, we just keep the clothing that they're using most regularly on a daily basis. So hats, coats, gloves, scarves, and 1 or 2 pairs of shoes, depending on the season. What's great about these is that they're accessible to our little kids. My daughter's 3.5, my son is 1.5, and they can both access their things as well as put them away independently. One other piece that I think is relevant to our organization is this bag here. I've got a hook and one bag that lives here all the time. The reason that I have this bag so that I can drop in things that don't actually belong in our house. Maybe they belong to a friend, maybe they need to go back to the grandparents, maybe it's an item that I need to donate and I want to get it out to the car. It's multi-purpose and it's right by the door for when I'm about to leave. I can just grab it and head out to the car. All right, let's head over to our entryway closet, which is the second part of our outerwear organization system. Okay, so now we're in our entryway closet. This is right off of our front door. And the reason we set up a drop zone is because it was difficult to get the kids to make the move from where they were entering all the way across the house to this closet. So instead, we're using the space for my things, my husband's things, as well as seasonal outerwear that's not used on a daily basis. So right now it's February, so this time of year it's things like snow pants, long underwear, extra thick socks, things like that. So those are the 2 systems that we have in place that help to keep the comings and goings of our house really smooth and easy to replicate over and over again. And as we go through this video, I'm going to be talking through all of the systems that we have that are like this. They are simple, they're easy to replicate for the entire family, and we love them. Now I want to ask for a request from those of you in the audience. If you have systems that are working in your house that are easy to describe, would you jump down in the comments and share them with the other people that are watching this video? It's a great place for people to get ideas that go beyond what I'm sharing here today. All right, the last thing that I want to talk about while we are still here is the closet system that we've put in place. So when we moved in, this is a builder grade home, and we basically just had empty closets with one rack and the bar that kind of comes with the rack, those sort of cheap wire rack things that you can get in that sort of seem to be in every single house. That's what every closet looked like. And as a result, we could put a few things on the one shelf
and hang a few coats, and then everything else would just pile at the bottom of the closet. So I will say that the best thing that we've done in this house is to put a closet system in place that is modular, that provides tools beyond just a single shelf and a single clothing rod, and I could not be happier with the systems that we put in place. So we got ours from IKEA, and it's called the Boaxle system. I'll make sure I put that on the screen because I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly. But it's basically a system where you install vertical rails, and then it comes with, gosh, I always forget what they're called. Well, this probably isn't the right word, but little arms that hook into the rails on the back, and they can be moved around to all different heights, whatever works for you. And then you can install shelves and clothing rods and drawers and all different types of accessories into those arms. And so we have this closet system in 4 of our closets, but it looks wildly different depending on how we're using it. What we have here is a shelf at the top, which I cannot reach, but that's fine. It's a place for my husband to secret away things. A clothing rod for all of our coats, and it's up pretty high so that we can have these longer coats hanging down without them hitting the shelf below. Below that shelf, we have a couple of drawers and then more space at the bottom to toss in a bag or a pair of snow boots, something like that. All right, now let's move on to our laundry room. All right, welcome to our laundry room. So the first system that I put in place that I'm really happy with is actually this tray right here on top of the washing machine. So this tray was actually being used as a decorative piece on a coffee table, but we don't have a coffee table anymore since we've moved to this new house. We don't really have a good place for it, and so we repurposed it here. On top of the tray, I've grouped together all of the laundry materials that I use on a regular basis. So I have my suds, my bleach, my stain remover, as well as a few other accessories which I keep in what I think is a heavy-duty marble jar for holding wine bottles. I'm not really sure what the purpose of the jar is, but it's beautiful, and it was a lovely gift, and I don't drink enough wine to make it useful in that regard, so instead it holds my little laundry accessories, and I think it's kind of pretty. So this tray makes it easy for me to quickly access the materials that I need on a daily basis. I do a load of laundry every single day, and then I can justify popping away the extras and things that I need less regularly into these bins that are up here on the shelf behind me. The next thing that I like is this basket here that I keep on top of the dryer. So this is for me to put whites into. We don't have that many whites in our wardrobes, and pretty much I only wash them once every couple of weeks when I do the sheets. So I often need a place to corral and contain the white clothing until that sheets day comes. Okay, now I want to quickly explain our laundry system to give you the necessary context to better understand the organization that we have in place here. So I'm going to bring you down on the floor with me. Okay, so like I said, we do a load of laundry once a day. Obviously, there are some days where I miss it, but by and large, that's the habit that I'm trying to stick with. So when dirty clothes come into our laundry room, they go directly into the washing machine. We don't have to have a hamper for them. I don't really sort clothes out except for the whites, which I mentioned before. Everything just gets tossed right in here. As you can see, we have a full load. We are ready to wash some clothes today, which will happen after I shoot this video. Once those clothes have been washed, then they move over to the dryer right away. Clothes move over to the dryer, they get popped in there, they get dried, at which point I have to go find the single hamper that we have in this house. If for some reason the hamper hasn't been emptied yet, which I am often guilty of, the clothes going into the dryer is a good indication to me that it is time to put those clothes away and get the hamper back over here so that it'll be ready to receive clothes that I will also probably delay putting away. So that might seem a little bit annoying to some people to only have one hamper, but what's nice about it is that it forces me to put the clothes away. I can't keep loading clothes up into multiple baskets and just delaying putting them away. I have to follow through, put the clothes from that day or the previous day into the closet, and then come here and get the new clothes from the dryer. All right, the last system that I want to tell you about in here is our cleaning system. Okay, so this laundry room is definitely having to pull double duty because we don't really have a dedicated closet for cleaning supplies. So it all happens right here. So the first thing that I put in place that I really love having is a dedicated cleaning caddy. This caddy holds just the basic cleaning supplies that we're using for 95% of the cleaning that's happening in the house. I'm pretty sure I got it at Walmart for less than $5. This was a few years ago now, but it holds our disinfectant, our glass cleaner, and 2 different multi-purpose cleaners,
as well as scrubbers, some disposable cleaning gloves, and this wand, which was initially designed for cleaning dishes, but I use to clean our sinks and our showers. Also a few toothbrushes, because those can come in handy in cleaning too. So most of the time when I'm going to clean or my husband's going to clean, and that is really key, we can just pop in here, grab that bin, grab a rag from the basket that's right next to it, and we're good to go. And I mentioned my husband because he likes to jump in and help with those things, but when he didn't know where anything was, he was much less likely to do it because he couldn't really do so independently. Then on these shelves, we do have a couple of baskets that are for cleaning supplies that are used in that 5% of occasions, or accessories that we don't need on a regular basis. I also have a basket, which I mentioned before, that's dedicated to rags. And I do want to point this out. Rags. So when I first got on the internet, or YouTube. I didn't actually discover YouTube until 2018, which I realize is an insane thing to say. But when I discovered it, I found that everyone was using microfiber cloths. And so I tried it out, and I have to say that I truly hate it. So I recently switched to bar rags, and I'm never going back. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next system of organizing that I really like to talk about, which is zoning. But before we do that, if you are learning anything that's been valuable for you today, or if you're just having a good time, please be sure to give the video a like, and let's go on to my kitchen. All right, if you're seeing any dirty dishes in my sink, I'm sorry. I'm shooting this video kind of on the fly. I actually already shot it once and it was terrible, so I'm trying again. All right, so zoning. Basically, the idea with zoning is that you are putting items as near as possible to the area where you're going to use them. So the kitchen has a lot of great examples of that. For instance, we have my baking cabinet, which I recently made my baking cabinet right here behind me. And half a step away from my baking cabinet is the large surface where I do all of my baking. So I can quickly access my flours and sugars and honeys and peanut butters and baking soda and so on and so forth. Pretty much everything that can be kept in a cabinet and doesn't have to be kept in the refrigerator is accessible right here. And previously I'd been doing a lot of crossing the kitchen in order to get the baking stuff, and it just added a little bit of annoyance and irritation to the process of baking, which I normally like. And so I decided to make that change, and I'm really happy with it. Another zoned system that we have in place is our cooking system. So we have our range with our microwave over top, and then we have a small toaster oven, really kind of convection toaster oven. It's kind of like, it can do a lot. That's here on the counter. We also have space where every time I pull out the slow cooker, that also sits on the counter over here. Now, in addition to those various appliances being right around there, we have the pots and pans in a cabinet that's right below there. I have my drawer filled with all of my cooking utensils right next to the stove. To the left of the stove in the cabinet above, I keep all of my spices, and to the right of the stove in a cabinet above, I keep all of my oils and vinegars. What this means is that when it comes time to actually start sauteing and braising and throwing things into the slow cooker, I have everything pretty much right at my fingertips, and I don't have to be moving a lot and crossing the kitchen quite a bit. Another example in here is our drinks cabinet. So we do coffees and teas, and I like to do juices from scratch, and all of that is available now in one cabinet. We also have our tea thermos in there. We have our electric kettle. So everything that's used in the process of making drinks on a daily basis is all contained together. Another example completely outside of the kitchen is how I've set up diaper stations. So I observed, where were we typically when we were changing diapers? And it was typically either out in our common area, kind of our living room, playroom area, which is all right next to each other, one big room really, or in the kids' bedroom when they're getting ready in the morning or getting ready for bed. So I went ahead and set up a basket in each space, and every basket contains the same things: diapers, wipes, and a cream for their butts. And I don't find it too difficult to have to, refill the two different stations, and it's really helpful, when you've got a kid with a really poopy diaper who's trying to get away from you, to just have the materials as close at hand as possible. All right, the next system that we're going to be talking about is toys and kids' books. Okay, so if you are not new to this channel, then you know that I've been playing with our kids' toys and books and whatnot organization system for a while now, and trying to find something that really worked. And the first thing I have to say is, if you're struggling with the organization of those things, probably you have too much stuff. I absolutely had way too much stuff, and I had really nice toys that we had bought, and I didn't want to let them go. We had bought pretty much mostly the Love Every subscription, and they're gorgeous, they're heirloom, but I did have to let a lot go. So just that disclaimer to get us started. Okay, so the first
tool that I've put in place for this overall system is out of rotation bins that are opaque, that the kids and my husband cannot see into, and that are down in the basement, far away from anywhere the kids imagine toys would ever exist. I don't go into those more than every couple of months, and predominantly what's in there are extra puzzles that my daughter showed that she wasn't that interested in anymore, and my son hasn't yet aged into, as well as hand-eye coordination and problem-solving toys that, again, my daughter had aged out of, but my son hadn't yet aged into. And the reason I ended up putting those in place is that I just could not get the closet that I'll be showing you in a second. I couldn't get it to a place where it was functional for me and my husband and wasn't constantly becoming a mess unless I got some more stuff out of there. But I didn't want to get rid of those toys because eventually my son will age into them. And so that was the solution that I decided to finally put into place. I'm realizing that for the next section, I have to actually move you into the office to see that closet. So let's go there and then I'll bring you back here. This is the closet that's in my office. You can see I have a lot of office organizational stuff that's actually mounted to the door of the closet. That's not really what we're talking about today. But behind me is the organizational system that I have in place for our kids' toys. Now, these are toys that are not technically out of rotation, but they're not out on the shelves for the kids to readily access whenever they please. They have to come to me or to my husband and they have to ask, hey, can I have, and then get maybe a little bit more specific. They're not always super specific because they're pretty young, but it might be something like, can I please have my Magna-Tiles? Or can we get out the Legos? Or can we do Play-Doh? Things like that. Then we can come in here and very intentionally pick one, maybe two toys to bring out into the play area and enjoy them for a little bit, clean them up, and then put them away. Admittedly, I'm not always great about putting them all away until the end of the day, but we do clean them up and set the bin aside. So then at the end of the day, we just have to gather those bins up and bring them back. And as my daughter is getting older, more and more she is able to participate in that process from, getting the things back into the bin to actually carrying the bins back in here. So it's been a great way for us to keep the toys that are out during the day just manageable and the house not constantly just feeling overwhelming, but also teach her little bits of responsibility in a way that's developmentally appropriate and that she can find success with. So I'm really happy about that. Okay, we're gonna go back to the play area and I will talk about what we have going on there. Oh, I also forgot to mention, we do also have some books that are out of rotation in here. And pretty much I'm just responsible for when those come and go because the kids never really notice them. All right, okay, so we're back in our play area. And for anyone who doesn't know, I always forget, you guys aren't really here. You can't quite fully tell what's going on. So the play area is right here and the living room is just right over there. So we actually have this pretty big open space where the kids can play and spread out and we can be amongst them very easily. So it's a nice setup. This play area was intended to be a dining room, but it felt for me a little far from the kitchen and I was like, I'm never gonna do dining in there. And I just wanted the kids to have a play area that was in the common space. So what you were looking at here is an old entertainment cabinet that we have repurposed for organizing and displaying a few toys for the kids. And it is a few. We have tried a lot more. We had a shelf that you saw over in our drop zone area, and we probably had 8 to 10 toys that were out all the time, and it just was too much for the kids. It was too much for us. And so over time, we have slimmed it down to just these 3 baskets. Wait, you can't see those baskets. Hang on. So just these 3 baskets, and what is in the baskets will switch out just sort of depending on what we observe in terms of the kids' interests. This top basket here has mostly stuff that goes along with their dollhouses, which they do also have the dollhouses. They're kind of right behind me over here. And then right now we have a basket filled with blocks and a basket with their construction trucks. And that's it. Obviously they also have access to the stuff that's over in the closet, but this system is working really great and we love it so much. And I wanted to share a story of something that I observed with my daughter recently. So she's 3.5, she's really getting to that place where she will concentrate on her play for long periods of time. And what I observed the other day, she was playing with her Magna-Tiles and she made a little pizza out of the triangles. And then she brought the little pizza over here. She took this basket off the shelf. She slid the pizza onto this shelf. And then she took this sliding door and slid it in front of her pizza. And basically what I noticed was happening is that she had turned this whole entertainment cabinet into her little makeshift kitchen, oven, whatever, she imagined was going on there. And it was a really important observation for me to have and lesson for me in recognizing oh yeah, she doesn't have to have a little kitchen to play with. Nothing wrong with a little kitchen, but she doesn't have to have it because she'll turn this into her little kitchen. It really all comes down to her imagination, right? So I've also seen her do it with blocks. She likes to play doctor, and in our block set, we have all of these little skinny blocks. And she will take these, and this will be her thermometer, and this will be her otoscope, and this will become her stethoscope. And she fully plays out and enjoys her little imaginary doctor scenarios that she comes up with. Now, she has a friend who's obsessed with playing doctor, and she has more realistic tools. And Peyton loves going to their house and getting to play with the realistic tools. And I did have a brief thought where I thought, oh, I could get her some of those to play with as well at our house. But then I remembered that when I was a kid, I used to really look forward to going to friends' houses because they had toys that we didn't have. And I didn't want to take that away from her. So many toys are cheap and easily accessible. And so as a parent, I can say to myself, oh, it'll be $15 and she'll have it herself and she'll love it so much. But I realized that I would kind of be stealing that anticipation that comes along with going to Lexi's house if I gave her her own exact doctor tools. Those are something that she gets to look forward to at Lexi's house. She doesn't also have to have them here. All right, next I'm going to take you over to the display where we keep kids' books. Okay, so this is a pretty popular way to display books. We basically bought some picture ledges from IKEA, we mounted them to the wall, and then we can get 4 to 5 books up on the shelf that the kids can quickly access. I've basically just sort of switched around. We're like 4 feet away from the baskets and entertainment cabinet that I was showing you before. The kids also have access to books that are in a cabinet in our living room, which I will show you in a second, and many of you may have seen before. They have a few that are in their bedroom, and then they have the ones that I mentioned in the closet before that I keep out of rotation, and again, probably only every couple of months, we'll switch them out with what's available here. Let's go over to that books cabinet so I can show that to you real quick. Oh, it's probably going to be really messy. All right. Okay, so in our living room, we have this full wall that is dedicated to this built-in cabinetry. This is one of the first things that we did when we moved into the house. I designed it with my dad, and then he came out and installed it for us, which was amazing because we probably wouldn't have been able to accomplish it without him. So I'm incredibly grateful. So obviously a lot of different things are stored in these cabinets, but within our toy and book organizational systems, we have one cabinet for the kids' toys. Sorry, I mean their books. You know what I mean. Anyway, there's not really that much to show except to say that we do have these available to the kids. So if they're feeling particularly excited about reading that day, they can pull out a lot more than what you saw on that display over there. But we don't have to have quite so many out and about for the kids. And so it helps to keep the house a little bit simpler, a little bit easier to pick up, stuff like that. Okay, there is exactly one more part of our toy organization system that I want to show to you all. So we're going to pop over to the kids' bedroom, and then we will be moving on to the last and final section of the video. This bed is a little bit unmade, but that's fine. We're all friends here. All right, the last thing that we have is this bin here for toy organization and blanket organization. And I will say this was like a family project, the building of this. It involved a great-grandfather, a grandfather, and my sister who did the painting on the front. Basically, we keep all of the kids' dolls, their stuffed animals, and then other just random miscellaneous toys that really don't have a home end up in here, which is why we also have to declutter it fairly often just to see, like, is there trash that ended up there and stuff like that. So it's kind of our miscellaneous bin, but it's an important piece to us. And so we wanted to make sure it had a useful purpose. This next section is a little bit different than what I've talked about before. So I'm gonna go grab a glass of water, and then we're gonna sit down and discuss. Okay, so the last section that I wanna talk about is really more of a system of thought or mindset. Now, when I first started my whole homemaking journey, I was pretty much following the systems that I saw growing up. And pretty quickly, I learned the power of tailoring how I ran my home to my personality and paying attention to the ways in which our systems were just constantly getting gunked up in the works. That was an indicator for me that something wasn't working. It didn't fit our family. And so I decided that whenever I noticed that, I was going to lean into whatever it is I knew about myself or my husband or my kids and try to make accommodations to that system that I thought might fit for the individuals in this home. And that didn't always mean that I figured out right away what would work. There's plenty of organizational systems in this house that still aren't really working, but it meant that I gave myself the permission to experiment and to take away any judgment I might have about how maybe I should be doing things, and instead just say, this isn't working for me, let's try something else and let's just keep tweaking and playing around with it until we find something that works. So you've probably seen some examples of that in the house already, but a couple of examples that I can point to. I realized at one point that I was never putting towels away. I was just throwing them on the bed and delaying and delaying and delaying. And finally I said, okay, I just don't like folding towels. So instead, I take the towels to the hooks in the bathrooms where they are supposed to be anyway. And then the 2 that are left over, I put into a basket in my closet. I have 1 basket for bath towels and 1 for washcloths and hand towels. And that's it. It's just as simple as that. I don't like folding. I don't actually have to fold them.
Decluttering and creating effective systems in your homes takes time and effort, but it brings clarity to your priorities and values. Each decision you make about your possessions reflects what truly matters to you. And over time, you develop such confidence in your decision making that it starts to impact and be reflected in other areas of your life as well. So in this next video, I'll talk about how decluttering can transfer into simplifying other aspects of your life.
For most of my life, I was overdoing everything. I had this little voice in my head telling me that I had to go above and beyond in order to be enough. And that pretty much existed in every sphere of my life. I started this channel because I realized how wrong I was. And I wanted to find my way to encourage people in the process of simplifying and slowing down and building into who you are as a unique individual. But I had to let a lot of things go in order to get to that place for myself. And it's still a journey. Which is a cheesy way of putting it, but these are 11 things that I quit in order to simplify my life. So number 1 is morning routines. I used to think that a morning routine was absolutely essential to set myself up for the day, and I've honestly tried it for years and never found that I was particularly consistent with them. And especially since becoming a mom, I found them really difficult because now I'm contending with my needs and my kids' needs, and my kids are not the same every day, and their needs always feel urgent, to them at least. And when I became a stay-at-home mom, I had it in my mind we would get some kind of consistency in place of things that we always do and kind of a checklist that we're working through. But what I found is that instead, I really just prefer to go slowly in the mornings and to respond to our individual needs in the order that they come up. Certainly there are things that just sort of have to happen every morning, like I have to brush my teeth, I have to wash my face, we have to have breakfast, I always make my coffee. I am pretty religious about that. But aside from that, just giving myself that flexibility and that freedom and the slowness has been one of the best things that I've done in order to make our days start smoothly. So ultimately that goal that I was talking about before of like I need a routine in order to set myself up for the day, actually kind of scaling back on that, not being strict in our mornings has given me what I ultimately wanted. Number 2 is leaving a messy bed. I've quit that, or I'm working on it. It's kind of a new thing, but I never used to be someone who would make the bed every morning, and I actually still don't. We have a pretty basic bed. We do a fitted sheet, and then we do a duvet comforter and 2 pillows, 1 for me and 1 for my husband, and that's it. So what I do in the morning is I simply straighten the pillows, and then I take the duvet comforter and I fold it in half, and then I take a throw blanket that we have and I drape the throw over the duvet comforter. And so it ends up looking tidy and it gives the bed a chance to air out. And that's really all that I needed in order to, feel like I could walk into the room and not have that silent to-do list go off in my head of that looks really messy, you should clean up, blah, blah, blah. So I quit doing that, but I didn't quite go to the extreme of making the bed, heaven forbid. The next thing on my list, oh my goodness, you're a dork. Number 3 is wearing full makeup. I've quit that. And in case you're wondering, has anyone mentioned it like in your real life? Yes. So I wear full makeup when I do YouTube, when I go on camera, and when I go to church. And then, occasionally, if I go out with a girlfriend or go out on a date with my husband, then I would probably put it on. Outside of that, most days I wear nothing. In the past, I would do like teensy bit, like not full makeup, but I would do a little bit, but more and more I'm just like, nah, it's fine. This is my face. It is what it is. And for me, it's kind of freeing. It's like, yeah, there's some discoloration in my skin, but yeah, I don't know. I just don't feel like I need it anymore. I guess I can't really explain it, but I do like the freedom. For me, makeup was never something that was like fun or creative. I think it is for a lot of women. For me, it was more just this tedious chore to be checked off every day. And so giving myself the freedom of, I do it once or twice a week has been something that I really have been happy with. Number 4 is always having inputs. So I read about this in a few different books. definitely Digital Minimalism and The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which are both books that for me were life-changing. And in both of them, they talked about the importance of silence and solitude. And solitude in particular isn't just about time alone. It's also about time not receiving inputs from other sources. So you're not listening to a book on tape. Not on tape, nobody does that anymore. You're not listening to an audiobook or a podcast or watching a YouTube video. You are literally allowing for silence. That's not an easy thing for me. I feel like I'm still very much adjusting to it. I think one of the things that is talked about in the book Digital Minimalism is the importance of replacing the habit that you're trying to let go of with new habits. So maybe the time that you would have spent watching TV is now being replaced with going for a walk. I also noticed with something within myself, which is I started to come across YouTube videos. They were slower paced and they had a lot of ambient noise in the background. So a woman washing dishes and you could hear the sound of the water sloshing. It wasn't like ASMR because those, I don't know, I haven't listened to like every ASMR creator out there, but a lot of them, it feels a little bit fake. The sounds feel fake or they're too fast or something. It was more of like slow living content where it really is at the pace of life. And I was like, why am I craving this? It's like, why am I feeling like obsessed with these videos? Like I just want to hear more and more and more. It was the noise. It was the ambient noise. And I was like, wow, I'm desperately craving this. I have allowed too much digital noise into my life, into my brain. So that was one of my first moments of recognizing that something was a little bit off. Around that time, I also became a stay-at-home mom, and I noticed, my goodness, you know, the pace of this. I was accustomed to working all day and interacting with adults and thinking about complex strategies and creative solutions, and now I'm sitting on the floor and watching a 3-year-old build blocks at a glacial pace. And that was a big adjustment for me. And it still is. I'm still working on that. So I was noticing that when I was with my kids, I was constantly tempted to listen to something, and I knew that wasn't in their best interest and it distracted me from them. And so that is something that I quit, and I've been working on quitting it, but it's part of the reason I switched to a flip phone. So that's still very much something in progress, but something I wanted to share, kind of the in progress part of quitting. The other thing that I learned, and I learned this in The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, is the author John Mark Comer connected the idea of silence and solitude to the practices of Jesus. And he observed that, you know, Jesus, he would go out into the wilderness quite a bit in order to connect with God. And the author was suggesting that all of the digital noise, all of the busyness, all of the overwhelm of modern life were things that would get in the way of connection with God. So the inputs are something that I'm wanting to eliminate from my life. The silence and solitude is something that I'm wanting to build into my life because I want to prioritize that relationship. And I honestly do think that becoming minimalist and slowing down in life played a big role in becoming a Christian. It's sort of like as I made space in my life, he got in there. And I could just hear his voice again. So, okay. The next thing on the list, number 5, I think, is jumping on sales. Now, I do want to clarify with this. I do wait for sales. So if there's something that I want to purchase, particularly a big purchase, like, you know, I'd like to get a new rug for our playroom. I'm not going to purchase that in March. I'm going to wait until the July sale, or probably honestly the Black Friday sale, before I make that purchase, because I do want to get the best deal on it. What I don't do is stroll past a sale in Walmart and go, oh, I should check that out. I should make sure that I get ahead of that because I might need this or that thing, you know, 6 months from now, a year from now, 3 years from now, and I don't want to miss that opportunity. There's a couple of reasons that I don't do that. I worked in marketing, so I kind of know that those sales are rolling around. But the other reason is that I really just want to trust God that He is going to provide me what I need when I need it. Now, I'm not saying you can't jump on a sale. If it is something that you need and you happen to come across it, that is provision. All right, so kind of in line with that is I quit buying the cheapest foods that I could possibly get my hands on. Before I get into this, I do want to clarify, if you are in a position in life where
you need to be purchasing the cheapest foods that you can possibly get your hands on, then keep doing that. I'm not here trying to shame anyone for buying cheaper foods, for not prioritizing, food more in their budget. This is absolutely a personal decision that everyone has to make based on what their budget is. And you'll see that I'm not doing this like 100%. The other day I was following the Instagram account Homegrown Education, and she flat out shared that their family, I think they have a family of 4, does $300 to $350 a week on groceries. And they do a lot of that, like really high quality, real foods type of stuff. And honestly, that's beyond my budget. So I'm not going to be shopping the way that they do. And that's not what I'm trying to suggest that anybody do. And really, by and large, I probably even should have started the video saying this. This is just me sharing. This is just some ideas. They're not going to fit everybody. Think of this video more as a practice of thinking through, is there anything that's going on in my life that I could quit, that I could eliminate, that is placing an unnecessary burden on you, or is more about you trying to control something than it is about you serving your needs. And that's what it was with the food for me. It was more about me just really having this tight handle of control over our family's sustenance and our budget, to the point where I didn't have very much trust in God. Basically, I decided to make a switch, not entirely in everything that I purchased, but I decided to make one change, which is rather than buying commercial grade meat, I don't even know if that's what it's called, but I think you get the idea. I started sourcing our meat from a regenerative farmer in our area. So that's it. That's the only change I made. And for me, it was kind of an act of trust that we could spend a little bit more money in that area in our budget and, trust that things were going to be okay. The next thing is I quit working against my values. So for years, I worked for an employer that had very clear values that didn't align with mine. And I just kept working there despite the fact that I was really uncomfortable with it. That was because I was scared and I thought I couldn't find anything better. And I thought I needed to provide for my family in that way, mostly just because I was scared and making up various justifications. There's lots of employers in the country who would have been a better fit for me. And, at this point, we've decided that I'm going to be home with the kids, so it's sort of irrelevant. But if I do ever get back to a place where I'm going to be pursuing employment somewhere, then that is something that I'm just not willing to do anymore. 5, 6, 7. So we're on 8. All right, number 8 is expecting homemaking to be effortless. I've quit that. When I first became a minimalist, I did notice a significant change in the effort that went into maintaining my home. And I highly recommend simplifying your home. I will sing the praises of a simplified home over and over and over again, because it isn't hard. It's not hard to take care of. However, it isn't effortless either. And I noticed that there were times where I was still putting in that effort and still having to build habits around, maintaining the home, and still having to organize it and still having to declutter at times. And I noticed there were times where I was thinking, I've done this wrong. I need to let go of more. We need to downsize again. And I would even get into this headspace of like condemning the stuff that we had. And I finally realized, nope. Homemaking, no matter what, is going to require some effort. And that doesn't mean that you failed at minimalism or simplifying. It just means that that is the nature of the work. That is the nature of all work. I started to think, I wonder if any of this has to do with the way our culture treats homemaking. Everything related to home should be easy and convenient. Our accomplishments should be focused outside of our homes. Like a mother who is an excellent home cook and makes everything from scratch and makes beautiful meals for her family is in somehow not as valuable as a chef who does the exact same thing but for strangers in a restaurant. I think that we've been devaluing homemaking and motherhood and probably parenthood in general for decades, and I think that that can play a role in how we perceive the effort and the work that should go into our homes. Because when we devalue anything, we're not going to feel like we should be dedicating time to it. So that's something that's just kind of been percolating in my mind lately, and I think that the work is valuable. I think it deserves care and attention. I don't think it should go to the extent that we feel like we're drowning in it. If you had a job, an employer who was giving you so much work that you were just drowning day after day, and you just couldn't ever get ahead, that would be an example of a job where you have too much on your plate. And you would have to go and have a conversation with your employer about the workload and making adjustments and maybe bringing in extra help and things like that. That's not always an option in our homes, which is why you get a lot of women like me talking about things like, let's simplify your home, let's simplify your schedule, let's take away some of the commitments, let's see where we can declutter your home
and declutter your lifestyle. The ninth thing, I think we're on number 9, is earbuds. I quit earbuds. For me, it was just too tempting to sneak them away in my ear, have my hair cover it, and pretend like I was participating in things that I wasn't participating in because I was actually listening to something on my phone. I know a lot of people will suggest them because, hey, you can take in a lot of content, listen to tons of books, learn tons of things, and just be getting around, getting things done, no problem, when you have earbuds in. And if you have better boundaries with technology than I do, go crazy. But I didn't have great boundaries, so I quit those. After I decluttered our home for the first time, kind of that big initial declutter that I did, every time that I would go shopping and I would be considering something that I might purchase, I would think to myself, where is this going to go in my house? And what I liked about it is it was a very non-emotional way of evaluating whether or not I really needed something, I had the space for something. And that practice was very simple. It was very fact-based. Like, my home is what it is. If I don't have a space for it, or I have to create a space for it by letting go of something else, I'm just honestly acknowledging that before I purchase the thing. Okay, the last thing, I'm looking at my list here. Overdoing everything. So there was a Wall Street Journal article addressing what the author called the self-defeating behaviors that she called the overs. And it was things like overworking, overthinking, overachieving, over-explaining, which I am guilty of. I try not to, but oh my goodness. And really, I was chronically guilty of all of these different things, both in my personal and professional life. It's really what I talked about at the beginning is I really didn't think I was enough and I had to constantly prove myself. And I really believed that doing more was essential for me to add value. I think that simplifying my home was really just the first step. After that, I started to simplify my approach to work, and I simplified how I did meals and what I would commit to in my personal life. But just starting with my home made me realize that my approach to life had to be basically flipped on its head. Overdoing it was giving me the opposite of what I wanted. Simplifying, doing less, was actually helping me to build the life that I wanted. And I think that the overdoing it was both a form of self-protection as well as a reflection of just having really sloppy boundaries. I would then overcompensate for those sloppy boundaries by telling myself, no problem, I can just do it all. So those are the 11 things that I quit. What's so cool about the process of simplifying just your home is that it triggers a simplification across your entire life.
I didn't expect to cry in that video. For me, letting go of my own high standards for myself or for my family has been much harder than decluttering my possessions ever was. But to truly simplify and slow down in life, we have to accept our own limitations and trade-offs. So this next video is for parents who struggle with doing this. I think it's basically impossible to go online today and not get a bunch of recommendations for how to live. And it can be incredibly supportive to have a breadth of insights, often from more experienced people. But it can also serve to fill our minds with such an endless buffet of options that we become paralyzed, or that we construct a monument of standards that we have to live up to. But this monument doesn't respect that we're human beings. It doesn't appreciate our limitations, or that there's only so much time, money, energy to go around. And it tells us things like, it's all important, everything matters, I have to. It robs us of choice, of individualism. It steals the joy of a slower pace and ordinary moments. It neglects to accept that we are bound by limitations, and that might actually be a good thing, a gift. But let me first elaborate on this idea with a confession from my own life. So I have a fantasy about the type of mother I am, and I don't live up to it, ever. But I carry that fantasy and hold myself up against it every day. So bear with me for a second, because this fantasy is pretty unwieldy. But in the fantasy, my children never watch TV or stream any kind of entertainment.
I never yell or lose my patience, and I only ever use the most evolved positive discipline interventions. I homeschool my kids in the Montessori style, obviously. I also take them outside for 4 to 6 hours a day, no matter the weather, and setting aside the challenge of a 1-year-old who puts everything in his mouth. I also work full-time, keep a perfectly clean home, cook everything from scratch, do crafts, preserve vegetables, garden, and gently guide my children in their practical life skills, moral development, and faith. Wow. Can you imagine being friends with that mom? Now, my analytics tell me that I'm exclusively talking to women. So ladies, let's talk honestly for a minute. Most of us grew up with a message that we have to be good at everything. Then we carried that into motherhood. And I'm not convinced this is a new phenomenon. In the book Pride and Prejudice, fiction, yes, but influenced by Jane Austen's cultural observations of the time, the character Mr. Darcy gives a lengthy set of criteria for an accomplished woman. And Elizabeth Bennet's response is too good. I am no longer surprised at your knowing only 6 accomplished women. I rather wonder now at your knowing any. Maybe the level of accomplishment expected of us points only to a mythical creature. Like, she's a cool gal, I'll grant you. But Elizabeth Bennet was cool too, and she spent most of her time just walking around. But if this isn't new, it also means our mothers felt it, and our grandmothers and great-grandmothers. This is a multi-generational burden, and it's too much. We're demanding too much of ourselves. And we're not doing it anyway. We're just carrying the burden and inevitable resentment around.
Keep going. Get as much of that black dirt.
So let's talk about accepting the reality of our limitations. I don't know if anyone's seen the Amazon show, The Boys. It's about people who become superheroes through a medical intervention delivered when they were infants. I don't recommend it. It's violent and horrifying. But I do think buried in the gore is a surprisingly insightful observation about human beings. Living without limitations corrupts us. It separates us from everything that's good, real, and meaningful. We're meant to be finite. It's how we were built. Our limitations keep us grounded in what really matters. And for a long time, I thought it was possible to be this fantasy mother I'd constructed. I just needed to find a way to do everything more efficiently. But now I'm wondering how much of this fantasy is a rejection of who I am, a belief that I am not enough for my kids, and an unwillingness to decide what really matters to me. I admitted all of this to my own mom recently, who is the kindest person on the planet, and rather than laughing at me, she gave me a gentle redirect. She said that I was made uniquely, but not by accident. God made me. He meant for me to exist and to be the mom to these 2 kids. I need to make the decision to mother based on who I am, not based on who I believe I should be. I need to trust that children can flourish in the home that I am capable of creating right now. Which honestly might have been the first time that I felt I had the choice to define motherhood for myself. So I'm going to let you in on the mother I actually am. She's not the dream, but she's not bad. I let my preschooler watch 2 hours of TV a day, and that's probably not going to stop. We go outside regularly, but bad weather limits it, and it's rare that we exceed 2 hours.
I'm an extrovert, and so is my daughter. So while we enjoy home days, we like our activities around town too. I cook simply, and I repeat a lot of our meals and snacks. Some things are from scratch, and many are not. Also, I couldn't tell you anything about probiotics or the perfect mix of foods for optimum nutrient absorption. I don't even know what that means. I make perfect chocolate chip cookies, but they're not my recipe. I make zero effort toward formal education for my daughter. She's 3. What's the rush? My house gets cleaned only when absolutely necessary, but it's simple and well organized, and we're comfortable. I hate doing crafts, but I appreciate people who have those skills. And as of now, my husband does most of the gardening around here. I dance with the kids and let them help around the house. And when they need my attention, I get down at their level and look them right in the eyes. I'm not saying we can't grow or aspire, or that we don't all have tendencies that wouldn't support our children flourishing. No, I can't spend all day playing solitaire on my phone. And for someone who wants to teach her kids how to cook, I probably do need to adjust to spending more time at home. There just won't be opportunities to teach scraping carrot skins in between a million play dates. But I'm asking, who are you today? Because she's your reality, and frankly, growth has to start from who we are today anyway. You know, I was willing to accept that I couldn't have all the things. Potted plants that require daily watering? Nope, don't have the capacity. 50 outfit options? Okay, bye. But fulfilling all my wildest dreams about the type of mother I'd be and how I'd live that out every day, those are hard to declutter.
Right there, Mama. Right there.
But I know from all the things I've let go of that there's freedom on the other side. There's joy, this quiet contentment. I think we were made to be finite, and accepting that opens us up to greater connection to the things that are real and rich in life. Our limitations are a gift. So I really want to know, who are you today? I want to give a shout out to Maddie Gray, who started me thinking about this subject. If you haven't seen her video on limitations, I'll link to it below. Thank you all for being here. It means so much to me. Until next time. Well, you are a rock star because you have made it to the final and 7th module of this masterclass. I think that slow living is beautiful and attainable, and I don't think it needs to be done perfectly or aesthetically or in exactly the same way by every family. As much as possible, I try to give guidance that's based on principles that can be molded to fit each family. But sometimes it's just fun to get some practical and straightforward ideas, so that's what this next video is all about. When I was a young adult, think like 18, 19, I found myself wishing I could be transported back into childhood. I would remember the hours spent in the woods, caught up in make-believe, living out a fantasy as intrepid pioneers surviving the wilderness. I don't think I was wanting to relive fantasy. I think I was craving play, nature, connection, even just moving my body. And I didn't recognize it until recently, but the joy in childhood play was in the process. But then, as an adult, everything shifted kind of suddenly to accomplishment. I don't crave make-believe time anymore, but I do desire to savor and relish in process. I
I think it might be why I feel so attracted to homemaking and cooking from scratch. Slowing down for me is still very much a work in progress. But here are a few practical ideas for slowing down and allowing yourself to savor the process of living. The first idea is to bring your community together. Steve and I are lucky to live near a group of friends that we've known for years, but like most people, time can really get away from us, and we would end up going months without seeing each other. So we decided to create First Saturdays, meaning the first Saturday of each month would be dedicated to getting together with our group. Typically this means one activity, not an entire day, and we try to keep it something fun and relaxing like a short hike or meeting for lunch. In full disclosure, we did get out of this practice for a few months, and we are trying to relaunch it in December. No one is expected to come every month, but if you miss one month, you know there's another coming in a few weeks, and because we can always count on it ahead of time, it's easier to factor it into our schedules, so it tends to be easier for people to take part. And I'm a big fan of prioritizing immediate family and one's children, but I also want my kids to feel part of an extended community. I want them to feel grounded in a sense of belonging, and I want that for myself too. So this is just one idea for bringing community together, but I think that sewing into relationships is an essential aspect of slow living. The next idea is silent walking. Okay, so I had to put this on here because I think it's hysterical. If you haven't heard of this new TikTok trend, it's going for a stroll alone and without your device or listening to anything. So, walking. It's walking. I really appreciate the Zoomers' tendency to take completely mundane activities, rename them, and then present them to all of us as if it's an entirely new concept. But I will grant that they are right. One of the best things we can do for ourselves is take time away from inputs and experience solitude. It allows our minds to slow down, it gives us an opportunity to get bored, which is important for sparking true creativity. It allows us to be present to God, to ourselves, to beauty, and all the good stuff in life. We're not prioritizing solitude in our lives anymore, and we desperately need, on a soul level, time to be outside. So I would be willing to grant the younger generation this one. Maybe walking did need a rebrand. Let's do more silent walking. The next idea is to prioritize nesting. There is so much joy in cultivating a life-giving home. That's a Sally Clarkson phrase. I'll link to her book below. And this can mean everything from caring for your home and family by decorating, cooking and baking, cleaning, observing familial traditions, savoring and enjoying the seasons. But so many of these things become an afterthought because we're simply not giving them the importance that they deserve. I was listening to a YouTuber who is a homesteader, Farmhouse on Boone, and she was talking about how she's able to accomplish so much within her home. It's kind of impressive if you watch her. And one of the things she mentioned is the fact that she's home a lot. 5 days a week, she's home all day. If we want to build into our homes, then the time we spend there has to reflect that. And as I said before, the joy in nesting is in the process. Yes, it's nice to have a room perfectly decorated, but every step along the way calls on creativity, problem solving, tinkering. It's just fun and satisfying all along the way. So we might have to say no to some invitations, we might have to cut out some activities, but in doing so, we'd be saying yes to creating the home that we dream about. Now, in connection with that, my next idea is to create a sanctuary within your home. If you're going to be spending more time at home, try to create a dedicated spot that is your and your family's sanctuary. This doesn't have to be complicated. For us, this is the living room. We have enough seating for the whole family, a comfortable blanket, a couple of pillows. There are books close by, a few toys, not a lot. We can play music in there. We found some YouTube shows that we all like to watch together. It's where we can congregate and be at peace with each other. And my last idea is to assume double time. Now, I am chronically guilty of assuming things will take less time than they do. Then I'll compensate for this false assumption by trying to race through my work or by stealing time from the things that matter most in life, like family and friends. This is my toxic trait. It's one of the reasons I've had to create so many boundaries in life, defining priorities, rank ordering them. So an important adjustment for me has been to assume everything will take twice as long as I think it should. And this might be different for you. Maybe you don't need double time, maybe it's time and a half. But I think it goes back to what I discussed in the intro. As children, we understood and enjoyed process. As adults, our attention tends to shift to accomplishment, and the more the better. Assuming things will take longer than we think they should helps us to reconnect with the process and release our psychological grip on accomplishment.
One of the lessons I've taken from slow living is the beauty that's found in showing one's love for other people by devoting oneself wholeheartedly to just the ordinary tasks of day-to-day life. We declutter to make our responsibilities manageable. We create systems to ensure our work is not unnecessarily hard. We set priorities to align our decisions and days with our values. But even with all of that, there will always be work and service to do. And as Louisa May Alcott once said, the humblest tasks get beautified if loving hands do them. Your efforts to serve your family with humility and love may go unnoticed by most, but they are deeply meaningful in God's eyes. Whatever you do, these seemingly small contributions are a beautiful expression of faith. As we look ahead to the coming year, let's embrace the humble, joyful work of raising our families and caring for our homes. To encourage you in your journey, here's one final video to inspire and uplift you.
It's our first snow. We all got sick and we're still kind of recovering, getting things back to normal around here. I think we just need a little peace and quiet and a little time to focus on home. Just got Theo outside. I think I'm gonna straighten up here a little bit, maybe listen to a book that I just started. I'm really loving so far. Yeah, thanks for coming along with me today.
with this bag on the floor. Who is in there?
Oh, yeah.
Wish that I could find the words to describe you now, as I'm lying next to you and the world goes quiet. Wish that I could make you see how you fit me perfectly, and I fall for you again. We've been through it all. You're the one who understands. In a world where hope grows thin, you've completed me. And the story left within tells me how to breathe. Wish that I could make you see how you fit me perfectly, and I fall for you again. We've been through it all. You're the one who understands. The one to make things right, and I fall for you